Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out for this. We're just so thankful that you guys came to hear Joe Burgess talk today. Thanks for coming to the Florence B Museum. Just so you guys all know, till Vintage Christmas, which is November 29th, the museum will still be open on Wednesdays from 2 to 4 and on Saturdays from noon to 2. So you can come in and enjoy checking out the museum during that time. And then also, we'll have Vintage Christmas. There'll be walking history tours. The museum will be open during that on November 29th at 4 p.m. So we'd love if you all came out for that. It's 2 walking history tours that day. And so we're just so thankful to have Joe here today, Mr. Joe Burgess, to tell his story of growing up in Hartland and share with all of us. So, thank you so much, everybody, for coming.
As I sit here and look around this room, it looks like I'm speaking to the choir. Because there's a lot of people here I went to school with and I've known all my life. And I'm thankful for that. So, I met Ashley and her husband Kevin back this spring because Ashley is kind of taken over our nice service that we have on Sunday night before Memorial Day, where Paul Scheidler, when he was a teacher here, history teacher, got young kids involved in reenactment. And they would pick a soldier in the cemetery and dress up and learn his whole history and then present it that night. And Ashley's taken that over. So when she had her meeting this spring, that's when I met her. And her and Kevin are doing a lot for this community. Then she came on the Historical Society website and asked for docents to be in this museum, which has made a lot of changes since 2020. And it goes to the credit of the president, Tom Parshall, who has turned this into a high-tech place with the heating, air conditioning, with the security system. So Pat and I came down, got involved this summer as docents. And during that time, Ashley got to find out about me that I'd lived here a long time and wanted to know if I would do this, which I said, I will. I've never done it before, so you have to put up with me. I've done some research, and I hope you enjoy the program. So I want to thank Tom Parshall, Diana Wells, who is a long-time member of this, Ted Bester, who I don't think Ted's here today, Ashley, and my special thanks goes to Dakota Dingler. Where you at, Dakota? Where'd he go? Oh, he ran out? Oh, there, Dakota! Come here. Okay. He's doing something with the tech stuff, because that's what he is. I want to thank you personally. I want to thank you personally for helping me put this together. Because the way that's going to go is I'm going to give a little history on how the Burgesses came to Hartland Township and how it evolved down. And then 2 weeks ago, I walked through the town and took pictures of what the buildings are, what it looks like today, so I can relate to what it was back in the 50s and 60s when I grew up here. And then I'm going to finish up with Jim Stanfield, and a lot of classmates are here that knew Jim Stanfield. He went through Hartland in the late 50s, early 60s, and took pictures. In fact, on the video that I think Sharon McGinley put together, there was, I don't know, a couple of hundred pictures. So I picked out the ones that fit with my program tonight, and we're going to show those. And so anyway, we'll get started. Okay, the Burgesses came to New York. They came from New York to Independence Township, Oakland County, Michigan. Joseph, who was my great-great-grandfather, bought land in Hartland Township around 1858 to start farming. The property he bought was on the corner of Hartland Road and Clyde Road, which is now Spicer's Orchard. Joseph and Mary had one son, Melvin, which would be my great-grandfather. Melvin worked on the farm with his father. Melvin married Etta Placeway from Pinckney. And I couldn't figure out how a guy from Hartland could marry somebody from Pinckney. Well, come to find out with the research that Joseph's brother was Chester Burgess, and he lived in Putnam Township. So probably when he went over there, he met this girl in Pinckney, and they got married. But so Melvin married Etta Placeway from Pinckney, and Melvin and Etta had two sons, Lowell, who was my grandfather, which I never knew because he passed away, and Leon. Leon Burgess married Edna Armstrong, whose brother was Harold Armstrong, who was a longtime supervisor here in Hartland Township. And they had one child, Janet. Lowell, my grandfather, married Lillian Taylor from Brighton. And their farm, the farm in Brighton, the Taylor farm in Brighton, was torn down and destroyed when they put the Grand River 96 interchange in. Because when we were kids, we used to go down there. But that's where the interchange is. And they had two children, Gerald, my dad, and Mary Lou, my aunt. And there was quite an age difference between my dad and Mary Lou. Lowell, my grandfather, he wanted nothing to do with farming. So he partnered with Mr. Hildebrand to open the Hildebrand Burgess store around 1928. They bought the store from George Arthur. Later on, Lowell bought out Mr. Hildebrand, and the name changed to the J.L. Burgess General Merchandise. Gerald, my dad, grew up in the village of Hartland, graduating in 1941. He worked at the store after graduating for a while, but his dad, Lowell, had a heart attack in March of 1942, one day before his 49th birthday, and passed away. When that happened, Grandma sold the store, and my dad went to work at the General Motors Proving Ground as a driver. He enlisted in the Army in January of 1943. He served with the 1st Infantry Division, which was known as the Big Red One. He served in North Africa, Sicily, and on to England to train for Operation Overlord, which was the D-Day invasion. He was wounded on Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944, from shrapnel from a German grenade. I understand he laid on that beach for 2 days before he was taken to the hospital ship and back to Walter Reed Hospital in the USA. He was discharged from service in November of 1944. He came back to Hartland and met my mother, Emmylou Bowles, from Linden, on a date set up by his friend, Cliff Lindahl. They were married June 16, 1946. Out of this marriage, 3 children were born, Joseph, Susan, and Michael. Growing up in Hartland during the 50s and 60s was a great time to be a kid. It was a different time back then. We were baby boomers. The war was over. We were baby boomers, and now we're going to go on to the pictures. And like I say, I just took these a few weeks ago. This is the hill going down by the Cromaine Library. And when we were kids, The Little Rascals was on TV. And these kids were always doing crazy stuff. So we decided, because Hartland was kind of broken up, and I'll mention that later, but you know, you had the East Side kids and you had the West Side kids. So we would build soapbox derby cars. And we would go, a lot of people probably don't know, Hartland had 2 dumps. One dump was in behind, way in the back of the cemetery to the north. And the other dump was where the new high school was built out on Dunham Road. But the high school that's there was not built on the dump. The dump was more towards the swamp on this end of it. It was run by Charlie Taylor. So we'd go out there, we'd scrounge parts, and we would make up soapbox derbies, and we'd run down that hill. It looked a lot steeper back then than it does now. Now, at the bottom of that hill right there If you go down there now, it's hard to say because this invasive species is taken over. That was the Ballfield Creek. And the water ran from this side over here across. And if you look down there, there's a fence post right where the culvert is. But at that time, that was the Ballfield Creek. And it was about 2 foot wide. And we'd go down there and we would catch minnows and go frog hunting. And I used to even trap on that thing years ago. But that's what we call the Ballfield Creek. And if you go down farther on the left-hand side, it's now called, or it has been called for years, Ernie Weingartner Field. And that's where, in the 40s and 50s, that was the football field and the baseball field. And there'll be more about that later. And then if you continue up through the S-curve and get to the top, that was Parshall's Hill. And that's where Jay and Arvilla Parshall lived. And it was a pretty good hill. So when we were kids, when it was time to go sledding, if we had snow or ice, mainly snow back then, we'd climb to the top of the hill and we'd slide all the way down. And it was really slippery. You could get almost down to here. If not, you made it through the curve. Okay, next picture. Okay, the 51 building. And it's called the 51 building because it was built and opened in 1951. And that was our elementary school. And I've got classmates here, so please correct me. But I know that we went there kindergarten. I'm thinking kindergarten through 5th grade. Fifth?
I think 50 was 21.
I was thinking, it could have been.
I went 5th and 6th.
Fifth.
Over there.
5th and 6th over at the 21? Okay. So kindergarten through 4th was here. And I had to be careful because my Aunt Edna Burgess, that I talked about before, was the principal. So if anything went wrong, my mother and dad knew about it. So that was kindergarten through 4th grade, and then 5th and 6th, we went over to the 21 building, which is now gone. But with this elementary school we had a big playground out in back, and there was an amphitheater over here, which is now all paved. But, we'd play marbles out there. We'd play on the swing sets and the stuff they won't even let you have in a school today because the kids would get hurt. But the one thing I remember is in that field, it was, Hartland's all sand and gravel, and there were a lot of sandbirds out there. I don't know if anybody else remembers the sandbirds, but when you come in from school, there was sandbirds you had to pick off. Okay, next one. Okay, this is now the Victory Baptist Church. But when we were growing up, it was the rec hall. It's changed. It doesn't look like it did. But the rec hall was everything to this community. Roller skating on Friday and Saturday nights, unless there was a basketball game, because that was the gym for the basketball games. And roller skating, that it was run by Bob and Evie Dingler in my time. I know there was other people that ran it, but in our time it was Bob and Evie. It was a basketball court for the high school, and there are the pictures right over there, right there on that wall. I think that's Warren Cook, and that guy back there is Grady Allman. But that's what the building looked like. And then here we got their cheerleaders, but that's what it looked like, and you can see the rings on the floor from the basketball court. And that was Friday and Saturday, or that was basketball games. But then we come over there and roller skated and had a lot of fun over there. Also in the basement of that building was the cafeteria for the schools. So the kids from the 51 building, the kids from the 21 building would all go over there for lunch. Now, I see Elizabeth here, okay, and I don't remember, I barely remember the 2-story high school that was there. That was torn down when they did 51. So was the cafeteria there when you were there?
Yes.
In the basement of the church?
I started 1st grade in 46, and they delivered our lunches in buckets.
Okay.
Then the next year, 47, the cafeteria was.
Okay. I'm glad to see you here because you're going to correct me when I'm wrong and give some history, okay?
Remember the ice sledding
Right.
in the
Yeah.
amphitheater?
Oh, yeah. Everybody's got memories of this area. the hobby shows. They started and I did my research. This library down here has got a lot of good information on Hartland. They've got one else section. When you come in the doors, go off to the left and right around there, they've got the community lives, when it used to be a community life, telling about the community, from the 1920s all the way up. And I got a lot of research out of there. And there's just so much information that this library here is put together. And that's right. I didn't know the hobby shows had run that long. They started in 1950 and went to 65. And then after that, it was called a variety something. But, you know, us kids, I used to display there. You know, I don't know. I know Jim Stanfield had a coin collection, stamp collection. People brought their weaving, whatever. Anybody in the town that had a hobby would show up at the hobby show. And that ran for 2 days, I think. Right? It did, Friday or Saturday and Sunday. But that was, and it ran there for 15 years. They also held the firemen from right down here in the fire hall. They used to have their fireman balls over there years ago. And if I remember correctly, did we have the donkey basketball games in there?
Yes.
Okay, we did. That's what I thought. And I don't know if anybody doesn't know about donkey basketball games. That's when they brought these little miniature donkeys in, and usually the basketball players would be on one set, and the teachers or whatever else would be on the other set, and they'd play basketball, riding these donkeys, dribbling, trying to shoot, and whatever else. So, and our Boy Scouts, the Boy Scout troops, the Explorer troops, and Cub Scouts, we all held meetings in that building. So that's a lot of memories right there. Okay, the next one. Okay, this is the field house. I hadn't been around Hartland for a while, and I didn't know this building was still there. So they call it the field house up here, and then down here, and then this is also the locker room. So in the 40s and 50s, when the guys were playing, the high school kids were playing football or basketball, like I showed you before, down at Ernie Weingarten Field, that's where they played football, and they played baseball. Basketball was played in the rec hall. So this is where they would change into their clothes and do whatever else. And from here, if they're playing baseball or football, they'd run down to the football field, do their games. Basketball, they just run over to the rec hall. But that building's still there. And what Carol was talking about, this area down in here, we used to call an amphitheater. And there's been a lot of grading and changes, and now it's a parking lot. So different. Okay, the next one. Okay, this is the back of the music hall. And this big field right here, when we were kids, that was our football field for the kids in town. Not the high school, but us kids in town. This is where we went and played football on that field, because it was the biggest open spot in the town at that time. Okay, next one. Okay, this is the Village Pizza, where they call it now, but this was, in the 50s, this was Bert Holmes and Bob Holmes General Store. And Bob lived in the second house down on George Street there, and Bert lived in the building kitty corner, which used to be the Farm Bureau insurance people there. But I don't know exactly what year that Bert, his dad, and Bob sold out, but that's when Tom Hamway and Irene came into town. And everybody remembers Tom and Irene Hamway, you know. I mean, they were great people. And like so many of the people, I mean, if you remember Tom was a short Lebanese guy. And so many of these people, even like my dad, they didn't talk about their World War II experiences. I didn't know it until I went to Tom's funeral, that Tom was a tail gunner in a, I don't know, a B-29, B-24, whatever. But he was, because those guys didn't talk about it. But he was Tom Hamway. If you knew the Hamways, they were great people. Okay, the next door. Okay. Now, I mentioned before about buying George Wallace's store. Well, right there where that parking lot is, that's where that two-story building used to be. And one of the pictures that Ted put on the Hartland Historical website showed that building and a blank spot, and then that building. Well, through research, I found out in 1907, George Wallace, that owned this store, took that vacant spot and put that building in there, which later ended up being the store that my grandfather went into business with Mr. Hillebrand. And I think now it's a credit servicing place or whatever, but it was also at one time the McPherson State Bank. Next one. Okay, this building here, it's changed in the front again, but this was Sardis Campbell's store. And I think later on there's pictures that I don't know. And then next to that is the Lindahl Looms. And from what I think Ashley said, at one time, wasn't that an ice house? That was the ice house. But when Mr. Krause got started with this weaving industry, he brought over Mrs. Lindahl, and her son Cliff came with her, and that's where Lindahl's loom, and that's where the Lindahl loom was built, in that basement, of which there's one right there that we have on display here. Oh, and Sardis, he, over on this side over here, on the back end of that wall, he had an ice cream parlor where you go in there and get ice cream and whatever else. Plus he sold clothes, he sold shoes, boots, whatever. But the whole front looked a lot different than that, because these guys have a lot of great pictures. Usually Dakota's got them running. If you come in here when the museum is open, and you can see them up there and see what these buildings looked like before. But I went this way with it. So, okay, we'll go on to the next one. Okay, this is the Hartland Hardware, and this Quonset hut, which now is the Village Saloon. Back in my day, this was the Hartland Area Hardware. The business was run by Bob Krause, and they sold farm equipment, household appliances, general hardware, fishing supplies, because that's where us kids went to get all of our hooks and string and whatever else, and about anything you needed. And they always had lots of BBs for us kids and our BB guns. And this building over here, Warren Cook worked in there when I remember, and they repaired tractors and farm equipment in there. Next one. Okay, this is a house that we grew up in, and it's 3627 Mill Street, and that's what it looks like now. There used to be, if you see the old pictures, there was a porch all the way across it. And this is where my brother and sister and I all grew up. And the one thing we had here is Dad put up a post, and he put a dinner bell on there, because back then we were never home. I mean, there was no iPads, there was no phones, there was, we were playing. So when it was time for supper, they had a dinner bell out there, and Mother would ring the dinner bell no matter where we were, and we knew it was time to come home. And these roads back then were gravel roads in the 50s and early 60s. Krause Road in Avon or Main Street was paved. So the next one, okay, and that's where Bob and Evie Dingler live. Who Dakota here is a third cousin. And I'm so glad to see that he's involved with this, because the Dinglers have been around and done a lot over the years. And Bob was really, like I mentioned before, Bob and Evie ran that roller rink, and I mean, they did that for years. Can you imagine that every Friday and Saturday night you're committed to go to the roller rink to let these kids have fun? Well, they did, okay? And Bob was very active in the community. He was a fire chief. He was a commander of our American Legion post here for years, and he was a carpenter by trade. In fact, that's how I got into the carpenter business, because of him, because we lived right across the street. And I can't say enough about the Dinglers. And Bob was also in World War II in the Army Air Corps, and then it switched over to the Air Force, and Bob stayed on for years as a recruiter for the Air Force. Next one. And this is where the Stanfields lived. Art Stanfield was a teacher, he was a coach, superintendent. His wife Donna worked in the post office with with Mrs. Gardner for many years. And Jim Stanfield, their son, they only had the one. When we get later into the program, those pictures were all taken by Jim at that time. Okay. And this is the mill. The mill the way it is today. It was in 1947, the original mill burnt down, and I don't remember it because I was born in September and this happened in November, so I was only a couple months old. But this mill right here, when the water came out of the mill pond, there was a dam over here, and then you could shut the dam off, and they reverted the water to go here and then underneath the mill to run the turbines. And when it came out in the back of the mill, and there's a picture of this later on, that's where we all went fishing. Because all those fish were in there, and Larry Wilson lived two doors down from me, and I was a young kid, and he was my fishing buddy. And he's still alive today. He lives up in Harrison. But I'd go down and wake him up and get him out of bed. Come on, let's go fishing. And we'd go down there and go fishing. And then also over here, this is where the water went in, and there was a grate here. And if you took that grate off, which us kids found out how to do, there was a ladder, and you could climb down the ladder to the spillway. But you had to be careful because of the water and the moss. It was pretty slippery, but there was a big hole where the turbine set that turned all the stuff to make it work above, and you could fish in there and catch the fish that were underneath there. So. Okay, next one. Okay, this is what Walt Goss's garage looks like today. It's been changed quite a bit, but we've got another picture towards the end that shows what Walt Goss's garage was back then. And where this dumpster, right behind where this dumpster and car sets, is where the original post office that I remember as a kid, and you're going to see those pictures later on. Okay, now we go to the interesting one. The Gannon House, which is right over there. And there's a lot of history with the Gannon House. The last Gannon that lived in that house was Joyce, and she lived there until she passed away in May of 1996. Mr. and Mrs. Gannon had 11 kids. They had 8 girls, 2 of which were twins, Joyce and Janice, and 3 boys. She had, because Bert, I don't remember her husband that much, they had, listen to this, 52 grandkids and 38 great-grandkids when she passed away in 1979. The Gannon House was a big hangout for us kids in town because when you have that many grandkids, there's a lot of girls and a lot of guys. So the guys were there for one reason, the girls were there for another reason. But it was a great family, and even when I was in the service and stationed in Rhode Island, which was a year in '69, the year of Woodstock, 2 of the girls of the Gannons, they went to Woodstock and they knew I was in Rhode Island, so they stopped over and stayed at our place for a while. But I mean, it was a big hangout, especially on the holidays, because when you got 11 kids and they bring all their kids there for the holidays and for summer vacations with grandma, it was always a good time because right behind them was a swimming hole, and that's where we were at. So it was a great time. Okay, the next one. Now, this has just been redone this year, so I hope a lot of you recognize it, but this was Cook's Nook. And at this time, back in the 50s and 60s, 23 was right here. There was no expressway. So these 2 bays, these were 2 bays for the repair garage that Warren Cook did. Now over here was the restaurant part, and then the back, the Cooks lived in the back part. Now, how many remember Cook's Nook? Huh? A lot. You could go in there and there was a booth. You could sit in the booth, and in the booth, or at the end of the booth, was a jukebox saying you could put your money in and you could press your thing and listen to your songs. So that was Cook's Nook. And the other thing about Cook's Nook is back in the 50s after the Korean War, there used to be a little building up on top of it. Anybody remember the little building? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. And what that was is they were spotting for foreign planes. It was after the Korean War, so it was, I don't know if it was called a Civil Air, whatever, but I know that there was that little building out there that had glass windows in it, because I went up there with Dad. You walked up from the back, and everybody in town would volunteer, and you would spend an hour or two with the binoculars or whatever plane you saw, you wrote down in a logbook. So, but of course that's long gone. Okay, the next one. Okay. I'm going to tell the story right now of the mill pond. This is Arlene Cook, and this is in 1957, one of the times that we lost our pond. The story goes, that's looking south. The story goes that Warren Cook, her husband, was in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 in the morning, was coming up Hartland Road into town to deliver papers. And he saw something in the headlights that didn't look right, and he stopped before he went into this. Now, when we were in school, which was about, I don't know, I was probably 10 years old, does anybody remember being taken out of school to go down and look at it? No? Well, that was such a big deal that they took us out of school and took the class down, and we could see the ditch there. So, speaking about the mill pond, and I had a guy stop in the other day and said, well, where was the mill pond? And I said, well, across that bridge where all that invasive species is. So, through my history, the pond has drained 3 times. The first time it happened in May of 1920. And according to the records, this was called State Road, or US 23. And where the bridge is basically now, there was a dam there. And that thing broke in 1920. And we drained the pond, and that was gone. So they repaired that. And in 1957, the dam didn't go, but it went over the road, and you can see the devastation it did. The road was gone. So all this water ends up in Parsheville, so I don't know what they did with it. And then in April of 1975 was the big one, because the Bullard Lake Dam let go. And when that lake let go, it came to Hartland. Well, that took out Hartland's Dam, and Hartland's Dam was on private property. So now you got Bullard, and you got Hartland headed to Parsheville. And when it hit Parsheville, it didn't take out the dam, but it took out the road just on the west side of it. So now you've got Bullard, Hartland, Parsheville heading towards Lake Shannon. Okay? Now it hits Lake Shannon. Well, it didn't take out Lake Shannon's dam, but there was a low spot in the road, and it took the road out. So then it heads on to Hoisington. In between Hoisington, it was headed to Lobdell Lake, where Silver Lake grows across in Argentine. And they sandbagged Silver Lake Road, and they stopped it there. So it didn't take out the road or the dam over in Argentine. But since that time, Hartland's been back to Oak Creek. So that's the story, and that's why we don't have a pond anymore. Okay, now we're going to get into, on the rest of these pictures are all stuff that Jim Stanfield took, and he just walked around town taking pictures. So this is my brother and I wrestling. Just flip out, yeah. And this is down at the swimming hole, this is on the lower bank, and the bridge is right up there. And this is Boy Scouts. I think we're on a camping trip, but you can see we're all out there trying to do something. I don't know what we're doing, but whatever. And this is Carol Campbell. Sadly, she's passed away. But this is Carol and her horse. And I was telling Ashley, because they own the property across the street, the big red house, and then there's the post office. And I was telling her about the big red barn, because anybody remember the big red barn? Okay. That was our hangout, and that's where she kept her horse. Okay. And this is Denny Holmes. And Denny and I were good buddies. We only lived a couple of houses down, but I mean, this was one of my best buds as we grew up. But he stayed here after his dad and father got rid of the store. They weren't here very long, and then they moved up to Grand Blanc, and then Denny's out somewhere on the west coast, the last that I knew. And this is the Hultbergs, okay? That's Steve, right?
No.
No?
That's my first husband.
Oh, is it? This is? Oh, okay. Well, that's Steve.
That's my first husband, and the other one's Frank.
Oh, is that one Frank?
Yeah.
What are they doing? Playing ball?
I don't know what they were doing.
Okay. Okay. Well, we saw that picture, and that kind of looks like Steve to me,
Yeah,
but
because they wore their hair the same.
that's right. Yeah. Okay. So that's Frank.
Yeah.
Well, you got a cigarette hanging out of his mouth?
Oh, yeah.
But this is right in the corner of Avon and School Street, and over there you can see part of when the 21 building was still here. Okay. Now, this is in Holmes's house. That's Denny, his sister Leslie. And does anybody know who that top one is? That's Leslie and Denny, and I don't know who that one is. No guesses, huh? Good. And that's Carol Campbell again, jumping off the bridge, or jumping off the abutment down there at the bridge. Okay. And this is the dam looking on the downside of it, and you can see the spillways through there. That's where we used to put the boards in to shut the water off, to go sucker spear and whatever else. Okay. Now this is the old bridge, and that's the Hatcher house where Ashley and Kevin live now. But this set back farther than what their house is there. Because I got a couple of pictures here, and I think I don't know if that's the roof of the big red barn, but it's set off to that side over there. Okay. And this is one of the Memorial Days, and there's Bob. I mean, as long as I've known Bob Dingler, and these pictures were taken back in the 60s, he's still fitting that uniform. I don't know how he did it, but he still did. But, this is one of the Memorial Day pictures that Jim had on there. I think, is that Art? That's Art. That's Jim's dad right there because he was in the service. Okay. Now, Mr. Loomis. Everybody remembers Mr. Loomis, okay? He was a great teacher and educator and principal, and we had him most of the early 60 years anyway. But he was, Jim had that picture, and I thought that was a great picture to put in there. Okay. Okay, now here's the mill picture I was talking about. Now, you see, there's a bank right there, and a bank there, and this is all open, and the water's down here. So we'd set up here fishing over top of here. And if we caught bullheads, nobody wanted to take the bullheads off the hook because of their stingers. We'd just keep smacking them against that black wall until they were until they were dead. That's the truth, we did. But, I mean, we'd walk around the backside, and on that embankment right there, we'd sit there. And this is, when the water came down the raceway, it came under the building, and then it came out here, and then it joined up the other creek right here, and then continuing on underneath the expressway. Now, people are not going to believe this, but this picture right here, that's Maple Street or Hibner Road. So this picture is taken from the village elementary, looking all the way up, and that's Ernie Grover's house at the end. That's Main Street coming across there, and that's how wooded that was way back then. Okay, next one. Hamway store. Okay, and then you can see the path and all the kids' bikes because they're all in there buying candy. Okay, and that was a side picture, and that was where you could buy your fuel oil or kerosene or whatever that Tom had there. And across that house over there is where Wells Gardner and Lorraine lived. Yeah, well, there's other pictures of that coming up. Go ahead, Dakota. Okay, now here we are at the mill pond, and this out here is called the point. That's what we called it when we were kids. And there was a point on the other side over here, and at one time there was a wooden bridge that went all the way across. But that was early, and I don't know how many people remember that. You remember that, Don, or no? That was before your time. But yeah, there was a point. There was a wooden bridge that went across, all the way across there. Okay, and there's another picture looking back up at. There's the Hetchler house that I showed before, and this kind of shows what the pond was like here at this time. And then there's the barn that's no longer there, and then there's the town hall where we're at right now. And there's another shot of the pond. Looks like he took these pictures in the wintertime or something. Okay, now this is on the hill. There's Cromaine Libraries up here. This is coming down the hill, Ballfield Creek's there. And this is what's now called the Ernie Weingartner Field. And Ernie graduated from Hartland in 1959, correct? Right? And then and your mother? Yeah, no, but he was killed in a car accident, right? With your mother? That's right. And that was in 65, and they were down south or going out west? Going down south, okay. And anyway, because he was Hartland, I mean, this now is our Weingartner Field, and that's where all the kids play, you know, that's where all the baseball's held there now. And then back in the 50s, like I said before, back in the 50s and 60s, or the 50s and 40s and 50s, this was where the football field was, and the baseball field diamond is basically still there. And that's where Hartland High School played their school games. Now this guy right here, his name is Dennis Lindsay, and he was the only person from our era class he was killed in Vietnam. And his records, and now is Sharon here? No. Okay. Well, he lived over on Maxfield Lake, and because Maxfield Lake at the time had a Milford mailing address, they listed him as KIA from Oakland County and not Livingston. And Sharon was trying to get that changed because it's Livingston County, it's not Oakland County. But he was killed in Vietnam.
He was a Green Beret, Joe.
What's that?
He was a Green Beret.
Okay, thank you. And who's that? Mr. Besser. He was business and typing and yeah. Oh yeah, would he?
That's what I remember about him. He couldn't flat on the floor.
Yeah. Well, that's Mr. Besser, and you know he had a side job. I mean, he was a pretty good cook, and in the summertime when school was out, he had a food tent, and he used to go around to the fairs and whatever else and set up his food tent. And I believe that during the summer that he took some of the high school kids who wanted to go and work with him, and they went, and they hamburgers, hot dogs, whatever. But when Memorial Day was going big time back then, he would set up his cook tent right next to Hamway's store there in that big open field. And, you know, if you're at the parade, you could stop there. Instead of having all the vendors they have now, you could stop over at his place. And then he ended up owning a restaurant up on the Little Finger, right? Yeah. Okay. Now this is Art Stanfield that I talked about before, and again, his son is the one that took these pictures. He was a superintendent, and he was presenting the homecoming king and queen, and okay, who's that? That's what I thought. That's Ed Dietrich, right? Come on, guys. Ed Dietrich, and who's the girl? Who? Oh, Joni Bender. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're going to go back into this some more, because the next picture, the cheerleaders. Okay, Judy. Okay? Kathy? Right? Okay, now the next picture. Judy Grover, right? Peggy? Okay. Who's driving? He's smoking a cigarette. Yeah. Okay, the next one. Now this is Jim Stanfield. He's the guy that took all these pictures, and that's his graduation picture there. Now, I thought this was my sister, but she said it wasn't. And this was down at the swimming hole. That's a pretty nice two-piece bathing suit there. Does anybody recognize the girl? Okay. Okay, the next one. Okay, this is coming down Crouse Road from the west, headed in towards Hartland, and this is the Crouse Farm. And I have so many great memories of this place, and I'm glad to see that two of his kids are here, Don Ricks and Janice. Neil Ricks ran the Crouse Farm. He was the manager for the Crouse Farm, and that guy was so nice to us kids growing up in this town. We spent a lot of time out there. We used to go out and help when they baled hay and put it up into the barns. And, Neil pretty much let us have the run of the farm, except, be smart and don't get into this and that and whatever else. But they had two big barns there, which tragically burned down over the years. But we'd go up in those hay mows, and we would make forts. Okay? We'd find some lumber, and we'd bridge over the top, and we'd go underneath, and Don probably remembers it, And Charlie, what was Charlie's name? What? The guy that worked for your dad? Was it? Where's Burton come in then?
That was the boy's name.
Well, that was the boy's name. But anyway, so we had to have a fort, so you had to have an opening. So we'd put these boards across, and then we put hay on top of them. Well, one day Charlie was going up there getting stuff, and he fell through the boards and went all the way down. And Neil says, you can't do that anymore. But up in those big barns were the ventilators, and they were huge ventilators. And they had a little, 4 or 5 foot across, Don? Huh? And they had a little lip up in there on the inside of them, and the pigeons would go in there, and they'd just sit up there. So us kids, we'd go in there with our bows and arrows. We had rubber blunts, and we'd try to shoot those pigeons out of those things up in there. But tragically, those barns burned down, and a lot of that memory is gone. But one of my big memories was, you're all familiar with Walden Woods here, and where all the RVs are parked used to be a big field, and there was one tree in the middle of that field. Well, your dad had a John Deere D, right?
G.
There was one that was a flywheel start. It was a G. I'm glad you're here to correct me. But anyway, Neil took me out there to disc this field up, and he got it started, and he said, look, all you got to do is go down, come back, go down, come back, but don't hit that big tree. I said, okay. So here I am, a little kid out there running this big tractor. If it would have stalled, I don't know how if I ever started it again. But
Joe,
yes.
you're right. The one you're talking about is a D.
Okay, I thought it was a D. I've been to some tractor shows, and I thought, you know what? I thought that was a D, because it had that big flywheel that you had to flick on the side to get it going. And I just prayed that thing didn't stop because I couldn't get it started. But the Crouse Farm and Neil Ricks and his family, so many great memories on that farm, and now it's a golf course.
So would you hit the tree?
I never hit the tree. No. I don't know how good a job I did at discing, but I never hit the tree. Okay. Post office. Now I showed before, there was that building I showed you, Walt Goss, and then this was the post office that we knew when we were kids growing up. What's that? And again, this is back at the bridge, and that's me, and I don't know if that's my brother next to me, but I can't emphasize enough how much time us kids in this town spent down in that water. But that was great times. Okay. I know. This is inside the post office, and this here is what you see right there. It's the same setup that these guys have set back up here. And this is just what his mother worked there, so Jim took pictures of what it looked like on the inside. This is where you're filling out mail or whatever else you're doing on the side, which is right across from where that was. Okay? Now, you believe that? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you don't see any barriers around it. It was only women working there, but this is all the stuff stacked up. But no, this is right behind, the counter, way back when. Whatever. I was kind of shocked. And it looks like it's pretty tall off the ground too, and I don't see a step to get up there. Okay. Now that's Lorraine Gardner, and then you can see she's standing right behind. There's that same screen that's over there that they brought in here with the old oil burner or whatever it was there. There's another picture of it. So if you go behind that display they've got here, that's what you're seeing, which is pretty cool. Now this is the Lindahl Looms. That sign right there is right back behind those guys standing. I wish we could find where the other one was, but you can see she's got the spinning wheels here and here in the window. So Lindahl Looms was around for a long time. Now we're at the town hall where we're at right now. And now see over there, that's the little hole in the wall where that box was that you could push. And if I remember right, because he's here, I'm going to tell the story. Don Ricks, you were in a tractor, right?
The G bird.
When the G burned, okay? And this guy ran across that field and jumped over that fence, right? All the way up to the fire hall and pushed that button, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So that was, but this was the town hall, and this town hall was, it was a town hall. Right here where we're at now, out here somewhere, there was a half-wall railing that went across with a door in the middle, and the township board basically sat here, and that's where they had their meetings, because we had our scout meetings here. And that door, this door, and the one behind here were the voting booths. So when they come in here, you got your thing, you went inside there was a light hanging down, you filled out your voting, you filled out your ticket, and you came out. And upstairs, we used to have the Boy Scout meetings and the fire department meetings and whatever else. And when you go on this first set of stairs, that's where the first fire truck was. And then when they got another one, then they put the lean-to addition on the back. So, but yeah, if this place could talk, I mean, it could tell a lot of stories way back when. Okay. And this is the dam that finally ended up, there was a picture before, but this one shows it better as it were. When we shut these things off, and I'm going to mention about that later, to go sucker spearing, we put a board in there, put a board in there, put a board in there, that stopped the water. And then from then on, it was a dry creek we could go get suckers in. And the last one this is the bridge abutment, which is no longer here. This barn is no longer here. And of course, that's the town hall we're in right now, and you can see, it was a snowy winter day. And the last picture we got here, I thought I knew where this was. Oh, excuse me. This is kids from Memorial Day in town. Because Memorial Day has always been a big day in Hartland. Yep. Okay, now the last picture. Where's this at? I thought I knew, but then the more I looked at it, I don't know. The church with the steeple and the road. Does anybody recognize that? When I first saw it, I thought it was at Fenton Road and Holforth. But it's not, so. No, I don't think it is. not with the pictures they've got here of the church out there. Anybody look familiar? Anybody? No.
Is it the old St. John?
What's that?
Old St. John?
No, not with that road like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, coming down that hill, no, it's not. So, what's that?
Is that part of Clyde Road?
I don't think so. No.
There was a church on Hartland Road that was torn down, but I don't know what it was torn down.
Yeah.
It was a Methodist church.
Yeah.
Across the street from the Gardner Cemetery.
Oh, really? I don't know. It just looks awful hilly up here. I mean, I don't. At first, I thought that's where it was, but then I more looked at it. It's not. So, but that's my pictures. I'm just going to mention the families that were in town when I was a kid. At that time, there were the Hultbergs, the Browns, the Dunsmores, the Cartwrights, the Holmeses, the Stanfields, the Jacobs, the Faulkners, the Wilsons, the Gosses, the Huffmans, the Campbells, the Lindalls, Holidays, Tices, Bennett, and then, of course, the Burgess family. And I'm so glad to see Elizabeth here because anything that you've got to add, dear, I'd appreciate it because, I mean,
Well, it was a fun time growing up.
it was.
I used to babysit with Joe. I babysat for most of the kids in town around Joe's age.
Yeah.
So it was a fun time and everybody knew each other.
Well, that's the trouble. You couldn't get away with anything. No, you couldn't.
The news always got home before you did.
Well, I was going to tell a story, but I'm not going to get into it. But Denny Holmes and I skipped school one day because we were mad at our parents because something. Well, my Aunt Edna was this principal. I didn't know the day that we skipped school that my dad was sick in bed. So Aunt Edna calls my dad and says, "Hey, where's Joey today?" "Well, he went to school." Edna says, "He's not in school." Oh, I want to go from there. It was not a good day to go skip school and run away when your dad's home sick. That's all I'm telling you. Don't do it.
Well, I did the same thing to go horseback riding out on Hartland Road. And we lived 2 houses down next to the cemetery, 2 houses down from Joe. So I needed to go out Hartland Road, but I knew if I went past the school, I might get caught. So I went out around the dump, came out on Weingartner Field, and walked out to the horse ranch. Little did I know, Mr. Krieger, who was the principal, was sitting up in his office and watching me leave. So I got caught.
Oh. I got some other stories. I didn't have pictures to go through, just to run through it. But through my research, I couldn't remember when the expressway went through. Okay, so I found out it was in September of '59. They started, when they did this 2-lane expressway, they started at Fenton and worked this way. And so in 1959, they were putting in the concrete behind us. So, you know, when they got done grading all the big equipment, they always parked it down here by Cartwright's house on Crossroads. So us kids at night, we'd be down there climbing all over that equipment. But when it got paved, after the concrete work got done, we would take our bikes and go down there and jump on it because, I mean, it wasn't open. They were still paving the other end of it. And we'd ride our bikes all the way to Fenton. You know, I mean, nice pavement all the way there and all the way back. And the new high school, our new high school, the village, was opened on, the grand opening was February 15th, 1959. And I graduated there in 1965, 60 years ago. And I see some of my classmates here that graduated at the same time, so we're not getting younger, okay? And the thing that was cool about Hartland back then, the high school was 7th grade through the 12th. So we knew everybody. I mean, you knew all the kids in the 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th, all the way up through. And you definitely knew everybody in your senior class. You know, not like it is today. But it was a great time, and we had a lot of fun. And other things I found during my research was Florence Deering, Mrs. Deering, who was the librarian here forever, and this museum's named after. I didn't realize that she was so young when she passed away. When I say young, she died December 21st, 1962, and she was 65 years old. And I thought she was a lot older than that. Now, my next story is with Doug Allman. And Doug Allman lived in the house right behind the museum here. And Doug was a milk hauler. He'd come from a farming family, and Doug used to haul milk to the creameries. And when we first started going with him, it was all cans. So Doug would let a kid ride with him on the route, one kid a day or one kid a week, whatever. So Mother would pack me a lunch. I had to be down at Doug's house at 6 o'clock in the morning, jump on the truck, and he would go around and pick up all the milk cans, load them in his truck, take them down to the creamery in Brighton, unload them, and they would dump the milk, and they would wash and sanitize the milk cans and bring them back and put them in the truck, and then he'd take them back to the farmers. But after they quit doing the cans, then they went to the bulk, which is the big things they use today, the big tanks and whatever else. So we would go, the same thing, we could go with him at that time. So the same thing, Mother would get up, pack me a lunch, be at Doug's at 6, and go around and suck all the milk out of the tanks. But then we were going to seal test in Detroit. So for a young kid going to the city and riding the expressways, it was quite an experience. The mill pond. I know I talked on the mill pond, but the mill pond, living in town with so much to us kids, it was fishing in the summer. Wintertime, we ice skated, played hockey. We put our shanties out there and speared pike. Frog hunting in the spring. And I wish one of the Cartwrights was here, but we used to pack up a boat, because he had a little boat, and we'd paddle upstream Ore Creek, and we'd camp out for the night, which right now is about where that bridge that they built across comes into the other fields over there. And then, when I showed you before, the dam, we'd shut the dam right off. We'd put those boards in there. We'd stop that water from flowing, and we'd go sucker spearing. The creek would pretty much drain down, but you always had these pockets, and that's where the suckers were. And we used to go get suckers. Another one was Phil McBride, which is Bob McBride and King's dad. He was running Walden Woods at that time. And once in the summer, he would come down to Hartland, and if any kids wanted to go out, you had to get permission from your parents. He would come down, pick up the kids, take us out to Walden Woods, give us a boat, say, go fishing for a day. And that was a ball. And this is where I really wish Bob was here, because the cheerleading camps at Walden Woods, okay, that brings up a laugh, okay, because the Michigan State Cheerleading Association, they used to hold their summer camps at Walden Woods, and it was June and July. I don't know if it went into August, but I mean, here, just north of town, you got 200 or 300 cheerleading girls in a camp. And where do you think the guys were? Yeah, and I know that had Bob McBride pulling his hair out a few times, trying to keep these kids out of going to this, where all these girls were at the cheerleading camp.
We also had the,
What's that?
baton. We also had the baton, they had that, whatever you call it, down there too, besides cheerleading.
Yeah.
We used to have the baton.
Chores. Well, I know most of the guys remember their cheerleaders,
Joe,
Yes.
can I relate something
Sure.
to that? You mentioned the cheerleading camp and stuff. I was in high school at that time.
Yeah.
Phil always made arrangements for me to have to spray for mosquitoes the week that the girls was there with their Girl Scouts.
Yeah, it was great. And then, I worked at Walden Woods. Normally when they needed help out there at Walden Woods, it was late winter, early spring before they opened up, because we went out in the woods and we cut firewood and we did this, cleaned up the main lodges over to get it ready for the summer, because, I haven't been out there in years. And I know back then that all the beds and all the equipment and all those lodges was all that hickory wood stuff. And I'm sure that's probably gone now. They don't use that. But I mean, it was some pretty neat stuff they had in there. So, And then we had a couple of characters in town that I want to mention. One was we call him Uncle Ray Dennison. And I bought the house that I bought when I got out of the service. I bought from his sister, Grace Hasty. But Ray was he was crippled up. He had these steel rods that went down both sides. He had these brackets and steel rods on both sides of his pants and had a hard time getting around. But he kept a mulch pile in his backyard of leaves. And he had a Bradley tractor, right, Don? Correct me if I'm wrong. It's a Bradley where it had the engine in the front, the wheels, and kind of like a bicycle, and then you hook something to it. Wasn't that a Bradley? Okay. Then he'd hook a wagon to it, and he'd go around town, and he'd rake, because every yard needed to be raked. He'd rake it because he wanted the leaves. But then he'd let us kids, ride on it when we went back. And the other character we had in town, did Tom show up, partial? No? Okay. Was Bo Peep. Okay? AKA his real name was Fred Saunders, and he lived over here off of East Street. And Bo had worked on the ships out in the Great Lakes. And if you ever see one of these bricks with all the pictures of the firemen in there, because Don and I were looking at it earlier, you can pick out Bo. But Bo was a character. And Bo and Walt Goss used to meet almost every night up on the porch of where George Wallace's store was before they tore it down, and discuss the events of the day. So anyway, I'm down to the end. There's still a few more pictures that we want to show. You want to just run those other ones on there, Dakota? Now this is Melvin Burgess, who was my great grandfather, and I reproduced that barn. I've got it in my house. It took me. I worked on it for 3 years, 2 years. I got sick of working on it because it was so. But Spicer, Al let me go through the barn and take pictures. Then I scaled it, and that cupola that I built that looks just like that took me longer than building the whole barn. But it's all actual. And if you look inside of the barn I've got now, the ladder going up for the hay mound and everything, the grain bin's exactly the same. But what's interesting, and I didn't realize this till afterwards, so this is Melvin Joseph Burgess, okay? His dad was Joseph W. Burgess. So the JW was before that barn was up there. And then when Melvin got it after Grandpa died, he took the W and turned it upside down and put the J there. So it's MJ Burgess. So it went from JW to MJ. But that's, from what I hear, this is some of his horses, and I guess he was quite the horseman. But that barn still sits there today. Okay. Yep. Spicer's Farm. Okay. There's a picture of what the Burgess Hildebrandt General Merchandise store looked like back in the 30s. And there's Walt Goss's garage. Okay. There's a house that's still there today, and then this building here has been replaced by the black building he put up, and then the post office set right over here. What else do we have on there, Dakota? Oh, there. And there it is. It's called the State Seward Bridge. And that's the bridge that was there up until they tore it out. And there's a good picture of what Hamways looked like at the time. There was a gas pumps out in front because he was a Gulf dealer. Is there any more? Or is that it? That's it? Okay, well, to finish up, Hartland really started to grow after the riots in Detroit in 1967. And a lot of that's got to do with US 23 and I-96. I mean, you look at Hartland today compared to when it was back then, and so that's it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it, okay?
We want to thank you so much for doing this and taking the time to give us all this great history. I wanted to introduce Diana Wells right now also. She is a tremendous asset.
Service. I got married to my wife, Pat. I bought Mrs. Hasty's house next to my dad's and remodeled that and then put an addition on it. And I wanted to stay in Hartland, but things were growing so much, and I know the life that I had when I grew up in this town with what we were able to do, and I just couldn't see that for my kids. I mean, we wanted to be out where they could have a four-wheeler and ride bikes. We used to ride our motorcycles all over it, even though the Sheriff Hards would try to catch us, but we never did. So I moved out of town in 79. And, but I mean, Hartland's always had, a place in my heart. I got great classmates. The class of 65 is, whatever, and we still get together. But anyway, yeah, this means a lot. I wasn't expecting this. Thank you very much. Yeah.